Levels in Michael Jackson, the propofol concentration is continuing to rise.
And based on your review of all the evidence in this case and your expertise in these modeling scenarios, is this the explanation that best fits all of the data in this case?
This fits all of the data in this case, and I am not aware of a single piece of data that is inconsistent with this explanation.
Is this what you think happened?
Yes.
Now, in this particular simulation that's on the screen, when does the propofol infusion end in this scenario here?
At noon.
And that's because you're assuming circulation stops at noon?
No, the stopping of circulation and the bottle running out of propofol are independent events. I simply timed them in this simulation so that they both occurred at noon.
Now, what if the infusion is dripping propofol, but it runs out at the propofol runs out at noon, but Michael Jackson is still he has not had cardiac failure yet?
If the propofol runs out while Michael Jackson is still, his heart is still beating, he's still circulating blood, then the levels will fall very quickly, just as in all the other scenarios.
And going to the next slide, what does this show?
This, I've extended that previous simulation by 1 hour. And as you can see here in this additional hour, the infusion stops here, but Michael Jackson isn't dead. In this scenario, Michael Jackson is still alive at noon. And look how fast that drops. If the infusion had stopped while he was still alive, the levels would have fallen very quickly, and he would not have suffered the arrest that he suffered. So I believe the next slide.
When again, not suffered the arrest. I mean, if he was left alone and he had the airway obstruction, he would
still have been injured. But he's alive. If he's alive here, then when the levels start to fall quickly, there is every reason to think that he would continue to be alive.
Okay. And going to the next slide, can you explain what this shows?
This is the previous slide, but I just wanted to blow up the scale from 9 a.m., where I'm suggesting the infusion starts, till noon. And then if he was alive here, to show you how fast the levels fall. So that right here, even if he stopped breathing here, look how quickly the levels fall. This is the femoral vein concentration. It only touches that for a moment, and then let's see, this is 1 hour, so that's 30 minutes, that's 15 minutes. So at 12 o'clock, by 5 minutes after 12, the femoral blood, the blood level is once again much lower than what was measured on autopsy. So if the infusion had stopped, and Michael Jackson were still alive when the infusion ran out, then the concentration observed at autopsy, once again, would have been very, very low. So this is the reason that, in my view, Michael Jackson died while the infusion was running.
So the propofol was going into his body even as his heart was stopping?
That is correct.
And that is a scenario that you believe actually happened on June 25th, 2009?
Correct.
Now, Your Honor, I'm going to ask the witness to step down in a moment to demonstrate the infusion setup for us.
Mr. Chernoff?
No objection.
Thank you.
Okay. May I just have a moment?
Yes, as long as we can have a description for purposes of the record, please.
Sure.
I assume this is based on a hypothetical. Is that right? That we're going to be demonstrating?
Based on his explanation of what he thinks happened.
This is
which is a hypothetical.
an explanation for his opinion, which can be addressed By counsel. You want to have the setup in the well?
I will.
Okay.
Right here.
Is it a little too close for comfort, Mr. Eudora? I just want to make sure the jurors can see.
We can start here.
You let us know, ladies and gentlemen, if at some point, because of the angle, you can't see. Thank you.
And may I ask the witness step down, Your Honor?
Yes. And Dr. Shafer, since you won't have the microphone, try to speak in as loud a voice as we can. All right, sir? Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I suggest that we start. Your Honor, may I explain what I'm doing here?
Or can I just move over here?
Sure. Feel free.
Can I have him just explain what he's doing? And then...
Yes. I think the record should reflect that.
Yes.
So this is a bag of saline.
Let me just give by you, Doc.
Of course. Which I purchased from Seacoast Medical, where Conrad Murray purchased his supplies. And this is the same bag of saline that I demonstrated yesterday. Put it on the IV pole here. This is an infusion set. This is not from Seacoast Medical. It's generously donated by Columbia University Medical Center. And this is the kind of infusion set, sometimes called an IV, which is set up so that you can continually give medication, as Conrad Murray described as part of his regular administration of propofol to Michael Jackson. To set this infusion set up, first spike it like this. That's the spike going in here. I'm going to fill this chamber with saline. And then I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to have the saline run to here and onto the floor of the courtroom. I will need...
Wait a minute.
Just give us a moment. We have a shortage of cups. Shafer, let's get a pail.
Okay. So I will run this into the trash can here. And this is what was set up. Now,
Dr. Shafer, now this tubing that you brought in is just kind of standard tubing that you assembled?
it's standard tubing. I was not in time able to get the actual tubing set from Seacoast Medical. So this is representative. And the key components is, this is the injection port. This attaches to the IV catheter, in this case just below the left knee. So this attaches to the catheter, and this is where the injections of drugs would be made, right here.
And you're pointing to what's been...
And I'm pointing to the rubber Y connector here, or rubber Y piece. And this is rubber that you can stick a needle into, as I'll do in just a moment.
And let me stop you for just one moment, Dr. Shafer. Your Honor, I do have an exhibit of Seacoast. Well, it's one page from the previously admitted Seacoast medical records, as well as a second page describing an XL IV administration set, 50 count, as well as pictures of the IV administration set. May this be collectively marked People's 220 for identification?
Yes.
Dr. Shafer, showing you page 1 of People's 220. Again, it's part of the previously admitted Seacoast shipment records. But do you see the XL IV administration set bearing item number 007774?
Yes, I do.
And you went through those Seacoast medical records to ascertain what that item was?
Correct.
Okay. And page 3 of People's 220, again, the XL IV administration set, 50 count. Does this show a picture of that item?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And page 4, again, just showing a larger picture of that IV administration set. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And is this item, as shown, reflected in the Seacoast medical records of Conrad Murray, is that this item, People's 157?
Yes, it is.
And just to orient us then, would what you've connected here to the saline bag, is this basically serving the role that People's 157 and 158 would serve?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and just to be clear, you're aware from the evidence in this case that this infusion set was cut for purposes of toxicology?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Then looking at People's 157 with the spike at the end, has the roller clamp.
Yes, as does this.
And what is this plastic device I'm pointing to at the end of this tubing?
That is an on and off clamp similar to a blue clamp that is evident on that tubing there.
And prior to being cut for purposes of toxicology, you're aware that this People's 157 and 158 were connected such that there was a Y connector on this IV set?
Correct. Similar to where the other set actually has two such Y pieces, each with a rubber top exactly as that has.
And based on the setup that you're doing here then, had it been done with the actual People's 157 and 158, then People's 157 would have been spiked directly into the saline bag.
Correct.
Saline would have been flushing down through the tubing
Correct.
of People's 157?
Correct.
And as it relates to People's 158, this, again, this port on People's 158 would be where a syringe could be inserted to inject, for example, propofol?
Yes, I believe that's where a syringe was found.
Now, had these two remained connected, as I'm holding it up, again, with the spike of People's 157 would be in the saline bag.
Yes.
It would drain down, and then the Y port would be where propofol could be administered.
Correct.
And you're aware that from the toxicology reports, this spike and the long tubing of People's 157 did not test positive for propofol.
Yes, I'm aware.
And you're aware that the short tubing, where I'm pointing here with my finger and downward, did test positive for propofol.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
So, proceeding then with using this saline bag and this IV tubing as essentially a model